After being petrified for almost 37 years, Ishigami Senkuu finally broke free only to discover that the world he had known before had vanished. Senkuu survived in this new stone world using his knowledge and restore what the humanity's advancement in technologies. He then tries to recreate a potion that set him free from being petrified and uses it for his friend. Taiju now broke free from being petrified and helped Senkuu to survive. They now recreate the potion from a combination of fermented grapes unknown liquid from a bat or any factor inside the grape. He then uses it to Yuzuriha, but it turns out that they chased by a pack of lions and find the strongest man in their time, Tsukasa. He barehandedly stopped the lion and became their ally. But Tsukasa disagrees with Senku's idea of restoring the world. He tried to get the mixture and break Senku's neck. This caused Senkuu and Taiju to parted away as Senkuu wants Taiju to spy on Tsukasa to enable him to find an ally, resulting in him getting into a village. Ruri had surrendered to her illness, but Kohaku and Chrome had not. Senkuu believed that antibiotics might be able to treat Ruri's illness. But even for him, creating antibiotics in this primitive manner is difficult. Additionally, they must construct the tools required to complete the various challenging stages. Antibiotic production is still possible, though. Iron had to be created first. To gather iron sand, Senkuu, Kohaku, Chrome, and another villager named Suika went to a nearby river. The iron sand must then be heated in the furnace to a temperature of 1,500 degrees after it has accumulated to enough. Unfortunately, the four of them alone couldn't heat the furnace. They needed assistance from the locals. Naturally, Senkuu and the others couldn't force them to work for free. They needed the plan to convince the locals, and he had an excellent one. He would sway the locals by preparing foods from the modern era that they had never tried before. Senkuu and the others then began gathering the food's ingredients. They gather asparagus fern and grind it into flour. Then they add eggs and continue stirring until a dough forms. Before boiling in a hot pot, the dough needs to be separated into thin strips. They use fish and chicken broth to make the sauce. They then add meat to it as a finishing touch. What do you suppose they produce? Ramen, naturally. Yes, it makes perfect sense that Senkuu would choose to make ramen. Who could say no to ramen? Everyone enjoys it, even the locals. However, just as everyone was enjoying their ramen, a shady character appeared out of nowhere. Additionally, that individual is holding a bowl of ramen. Asajiri Gen, a contemporary human who was freed from petrification by Tsukasa, turns out to be that person. He was a magician in a past life. That explains how he was able to appear in that manner out of the blue and sneak a bowl of ramen. Nevertheless, he visited the village to observe and determine whether Senkuu was still alive. But secretly, he respects Senkuu. Senkuu and the others permitted him to remain in the village because they now needed to make iron for more crucial purposes. To cut a long story short, after they were successful in producing iron, they went on to produce electricity generators. To do this, they wrapped an iron rod in copper, raised it above the ground, and struck it with lightning, which turned it into a strong magnet. Later, the magnets were employed as power sources. Senkuu demonstrated electricity to everyone later that evening. Those who witnessed it were amazed as he scaled the house's roof and turned on the lamp with electricity. But then something unexpected occurred. Jen was attacked by a villager while she was by herself in the forest, suffering serious injuries. He was well taken care of by Senkuu and his friends, and he was so moved by their kindness that he chose to defect to Senku's science kingdom. As suggested by Jen, he asked Senkuu to prepare a bottle of coke for him. After the wound had healed a few days later, Jen went straight back to Tsukasa's home. But this time, he works with Taiju and Yuzuriha as Senku's spies. Senkuu and the others eventually identify the attacker who attacked Jen after conducting their investigation. After Kohaku, he is Magma, the strongest fighter in the community. He is also the best candidate to lead the village, in addition to everything else. The village has a custom of holding a fighting competition, with the winner earning the right to become the head of the community and wed Ruri. Magma lost to Kohaku in the previous tournament, which was held the previous year. However, Kohaku's victory is disregarded because she is Ruri's sister. As a result, the competition would be repeated this year, with Magma once again being a strong contender for the title. However, Senkuu and his friends don't want Magma to win because if he does and marries Ruri, their plan to heal her will be even more challenging. Magma didn't appear to be a man who would welcome visitors to his wife's home. So, they started splitting up the tasks. While Senkuu and Chrome continue to manufacture antibiotics, Kinru and Jinru will train with Kohaku. Senkuu is currently in need of a glass case. He took the time to make Suika, who was nearsighted, glasses before they started on the container though. And to make matters simpler, he attached the glasses to the mask she frequently wore. She wept joyfully because she could see how beautiful the surroundings were. Senkuu and Chrome continued to work on creating glass cases after making glasses for Suika. But sadly, the results of their work are always disastrous. Chrome immediately thought of a resident with great hand dexterity. He is Keisuke, an imposing senior who created the bridge and other infrastructure for the community. Senkuu and Chrome were able to create what they needed with the assistance of that tough old man. Making sulfuric acid, a chemical compound that contains poison, is the next step. Senkuu, however, is unaffected by this since he already understands what a mask is. They were able to obtain sulfuric acid from its source without much difficulty. Senkuu and Chrome still require the ingredient sake to complete their recipe. However, they had no plans to include it in Ruri's medication. Senkuu only wanted the locals to be able to enjoy sake to mark the conclusion of the competition. The village warriors engaged in combat the following day. The competitors were Kohaku, Senkuu, Chrome, Jinru, and Kinru. Kohaku, however, is ultimately unable to take part in the competition because Magma has already carried out his cunning plan to have her disqualified. He kidnaps Suika and hides her before the competition, making Kohaku search for her. Since Suika was the best fighter the village had, she oversaw finding her. The competition then started without waiting for Kohaku to show up, with Magma taking on Kinru in the opening match. Kinru is a powerful and skilled combatant. He shares the same fatal flaw as Suika, which is nearsightedness. Fortunately, Suika returned at the ideal moment. She threw her mask at Kinru when she saw him fighting so he could take it. By dodging all of Magma's attacks while wearing the mask, Kinru was able to corner him after launching a counterattack. Magma complained to the referee for allowing Kinru to wear a mask as if realizing he couldn't defeat his opponent. He immediately turned to the referee after raising his objection to inquire if he was permitted to wear a mask. However, Magma had been waiting for just that. He was caught off guard, and Magma slammed into him from behind. Magma ultimately prevailed in the battle thanks to his devious strategies. In the second fight, Chrome was successful in defeating his opponent. Then, in the third fight, Senkuu, who was supposed to face Kohaku, won because she had yet to return to the arena. Magma must play Chrome in the semifinals. He was no match for the cunning man. Magma was physically much stronger than Chrome, making their fight appear more like torture than a fair contest. Chrome, however, eventually discovered a way to defeat Magma using Suika's glasses and sunlight after his body had already been severely damaged. He scorched Magma's body, causing him to scream in the heat of the flames and giving him the advantage in the battle. Senkuu also prevailed in the semifinal match, so Chrome and Senkuu squared off in the championship match. Chrome, however, didn't have the energy to fight because it appears that his fight with Magma left him with serious injuries. Senkuu ultimately prevailed in that tournament. As a result, he was immediately named the village leader. Everyone is surprised by what happened. He had no choice and immediately become Ruri's husband. He just marries Ruri and the village will become his. Then act like a psycho and immediately asked for the village's sake. Then immediately divorce Ruri. Everyone was surprised by his insane decision. Senkuu processed the medication for Ruri after the match and gave it to her as soon as it was prepared. For the following few days, he kept giving her the medication until she finally felt better. The villagers trusted Senkuu even more because of his morals and tournament triumph. They all concurred that he should become the new village chief. Additionally, he practically has a right to be familiar with the village's history as the chief. However, what Ruri told him about the village's past made him shudder in disbelief. It turns out that the village shares his last name, Ishigami, with the name. What happened, then? Why does the village have the same name as Senkuu? We have to go back to just before the petrification incident to find out. Ishigami Byakuya, Senku's father, served as a representative astronaut for Japan at that time. He was aboard the International Space Station with 5 other people when the petrification incident took place. Lillian Weinberg, Shamil, Daria, Yakov, and Connie made up a group of 5. They could only watch as a strange green light engulfed the Earth from space. They decide to go back to Earth out of worry, but when they do, they discover everyone has been frozen. They had no idea if other people were still alive, and they had no idea how to restore normalcy to the situation. As a result, they make an effort to get by on just the 6 of them. They created a village, copied it, and eventually increased its population to become Ishigami Village. Senkuu now realized that all the villagers in front of him, including his father, were descended from the 6 astronauts. The election of a new village chief is currently being celebrated by all the villagers. However, Ruri takes Senkuu to their ancestors' graves during the celebration and reads him a letter from Byakuya, who is confident Senkuu will come back to life someday. So, to save mankind, he gave Senkuu the order to rebuild civilization. Senkuu meets Gen when he gets back to the village, and Gen tells him that the Tsukasa Empire has sent troops to occupy Ishigami Village. They did indeed arrive to attack a short while later, led by Hyaga, Tsukasa's right-hand man. Similar to Tsukasa, Hyaga is chosen to command the troops because of his outstanding fighting skills. Senkuu, however, already has a strategy for dealing with them, albeit a short-term one. He pretended that the Science Kingdom had produced a lot of weapons and used the remaining gunpowder to scare the invaders away. Tsukasa's troops decided to temporarily retreat after becoming alarmed after hearing that. Senkuu knows that if a storm comes, Tsukasa's troops will attack once more since the storm will render weapons useless. He, therefore, made new weapons, including the katana, with the time that was left. The inhabitants of the Science Kingdom were able to disarm the invaders' stone weapons as soon as the battle started thanks to the fighting prowess of Kohaku, Magma, Kinru, and the others. However, it doesn't imply that Hyaga has given up. To give them time to launch a surprise attack, he gave one of his men, Hamura, the order to set fire to the village and the bridge. Suika steps up to lure Tsukasa's troops to the sulfuric acid source in this precarious situation. Senkuu and Kohaku immediately followed her with masks as if realizing her plan. The war was ultimately won by the Kingdom of Science after many of Tsukasa's soldiers perished from breathing in sulfuric acid's poisonous gas. By scaling a tall tree to get away from the deadly gas, Hyaga and Hamura were able to save themselves. Despite suffering a humiliating loss in the war with the Science Kingdom, the Tsukasa Empire was not destroyed. Senkuu was aware that they would launch another assault in retaliation. He intended to make calls in anticipation of a future attack by Tsukasa's forces. He wanted to build guns, but he was short on supplies because he needed shells and nitric acid to make gunpowder. The nitric acid cavern was now ruled by the Tsukasa Empire. As a result, Senkuu was forced to alter his plan of action. He decided to produce telephones instead of firearms because he believed they were crucial weapons. One could easily perform the role of a spy just by using that tool. They can sneak into enemy territory, look into their defenses, and report back to Senkuu as soon as they discover any vulnerabilities. Of course, making a phone call alone is a time-consuming and difficult process. Senkuu, however, had to construct a water wheel that was coupled with a generator to keep the story brief. They could then construct a hydroelectric power plant, which is a crucial part of a phone to function. They had to also produce batteries, light bulbs, and electrical storage containers, so it didn't end there. Making these items served as a light source for them as they excavated in the pitch-black caverns that contained the metal that could withstand the most heat, tungsten. Senkuu and the citizens of the Kingdom of Science couldn't create a cell phone until they had acquired all the necessary supplies and tools.